What is up, everyone? Welcome back to episode 45 of the You Might Be Surprised podcast. This episode is a special episode. I have Chris Michael Harris on. He is an entrepreneur. He is the founder of StartupU, and he also has the StartupU podcast. He's a really cool guy. We get into it. We talk about his beginnings of entrepreneurship to what he's doing now. We talk about Justice League and the Snyder Cut. It's a really cool podcast, and I hope you guys enjoy it. All of Chris's socials and his platforms that he uses will be linked down below. And if you like me, you should check him out. He's a really cool guy. And Chris, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It meant a lot to me. So let's get right into the episode. Let's get into it. Two Chris's on a podcast. It's about to be wild.
It's already wild.
All right, man. So, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the You Might Be Surprised podcast. I have a dope guest today. He's also a Chris. Chris, why don't you tell the people who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so entrepreneur. I host a podcast. I'm the founder of StartupU. I kind of got ahead of myself there. Founder of StartupU. So we actually provide resources to educate people on how to start a business and how to kind of run your business successfully, primarily for online business owners. I've been in multiple spaces. I play in the tech space. My first business was an offline company. We built that company to multi-millions from my college apartment, which was a crazy story. And then kind of found a home recently in the online space, educating people through what's our new program called StartupU. We have a plethora of programs that are there. And then, as I mentioned, host a podcast called the StartupU podcast. And then I have a YouTube channel, which is relatively new, about a year and a half, called StartupU TV.
For sure, man. That's actually how I found out about you. Was your YouTube. I was about, I want to say a month or two ago, I was actually shopping around to get a new podcast mic. And I came across, I was either going to get the Rode Procaster. I actually got the Rode Procaster, ended up returning it for the Shure SM7B. And I saw that, and you were the reason why I actually thought, like, I actually got it. I was like, oh, because I started out with just the Rode Pod mic.
Yeah, it's a good mic.
It honestly did. It was perfect, and I didn't even need to get this. But I'm a gearhead. I love gear, even though I don't need it, but I love it. And I was like, as soon as I have this, it's like I don't have any blockage. Like, I don't need to worry about, oh, my podcast will be good because I don't have like a great mic. Now that I have all this stuff, now it's just like go.
Exactly. No, you hit the nail on the head, man. Because once you've got the stuff, you just go. You don't have to worry about it or like focus on the acoustics in your room and stuff like that. I will say this. I appreciate you not beating me up on that video. Because I made a huge mistake. This is maybe a valuable lesson for people with YouTube if they're planning on doing YouTube. So we had all these microphones that we were testing for my wife, right? She bought like 8 microphones. I was like, just buy a bunch of microphones, test them out, and then return whichever one you don't want, whichever one doesn't sound good. So like the return date was like in 3 days, right? I'm like, so I have to put this on YouTube, right? So I start recording all these videos with the microphones, and I wasn't doing my normal due diligence with videos, and I'm not an audio engineer. Like I'm an entrepreneur that hosts a podcast. I know about microphones to a degree because I use a microphone for what I do, but that's the extent of what I do. I don't work at Geek Squad or, like a place that actually understands like the nuance of the microphone.
For sure.
Anyways, so I was familiar with Rode because I had a Rode NT with the USB version. And so that you talk into like the front face of it, right? So I did that with the Procaster, assuming it's the same and it's end address. And I got brutalized in the comments for people like, oh, why is he doing the microphone like that? He's such an idiot. Blah. So I put out an apology video and I left it up. I was like, I could take it down or I could just own it and be like, all right, yeah, I made a mistake, guys. I'm sorry. And I was like, this is why, this and this is not my microphone. But I was just, anyway. So yeah. So thank you for overlooking the fact that I got butchered on YouTube for that specifically.
For sure. I actually did the same exact thing. I had it turned sideways. And whenever I was hearing it back, I was like, this sounds absolutely terrible. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? If I buy this microphone, I'm gonna in the back of my head I'm be like, I should have just bought the Rode or the Shure. I should have just bought that. So I was just like, I'm just going for it.
Well, you sound great, man. It's a good microphone.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about your startup companies. That sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah. So going back, and I'll be as concise as possible here, but going back to early days, like I always saw beyond the hour for pay model, right? But this was before entrepreneurship was like a thing, right? This was before like you could put entrepreneur on a bio on Instagram and you're like, you're official, right?
For sure.
This was like maybe you did something on the side to make a few extra bucks. So whether it was car detailing or mowing lawns or, you know, whatever, right? Just like stuff that you did. So like in 5th grade, I started mowing lawns, and by the end of the summer, I was mowing like my entire street, my entire cul-de-sac, and I made like $3 grand. Like, what 5th grader? You're right. And my dad got me my first credit card, and so I was putting expenses on there and the gas and stuff like that. So anyways, that was a good experience. And then I kind of done side hustles like that, you know, car detailing for neighbors and stuff like that. So got into high school and more of the same, right? Started a DIY kind of, I think we called it work for less, where we kind of did, you know, pressure washing driveways, edging hedges for people, cleaning gutters, right? More just around the house, like honeydew stuff that the honey didn't want to do. So one of those requests was a moving request. So family had moved from Michigan to Georgia, where I lived at the time, and had a really bad experience. They paid tens of thousands of dollars to move off their belongings and had a lot of sentimental value. Sentimental items that were destroyed. And so they wanted a different experience. They were downsizing from their home into their like kind of more of a retirement, you know, setup. So they're like, look, they found us, I don't know where. I think we, you know, at that point, there was no way to advertise. I mean, the internet existed, but it wasn't as prominent as it is now in terms of advertising yourself for business. And we'd put flyers up all over the place and pass out business cards and stuff like that. So they found one somehow. So we ended up moving them, made $8 grand from that one moving request. We hired a bunch of our friends. It was like 6 of us. We were out there and we actually did a good job. I made $16,000 that summer. This was between like my junior and senior year of high school, I believe, right? Made 16 grand, right? So pretty solid stuff. Get to college, more of the same, right? Still doing side hustles, personal training. I mean, I've got side hustles from here to Timbuktu, like just doing all kinds of stuff. Again, not taking it seriously as like, this is a career opportunity, but like, I don't want to work at Wendy's. I'd rather just do something on my own, right?
Yeah.
So saw some girls moving this big, heavy fold-out sofa down the hallway in this building that I lived in, off-campus apartment in college. And I'm like, let's help them out. My brother was with me. Let's help them out. This thing, they're like back and forth, you know, kind of like they were carrying it drunk because those things are heavy. So the mom tipped us like $50 a piece. And so I was like, wow, like we've got something here. Let's pursue it. Go to the lease office manager, gave her a flyer. She starts telling the people who live in that building, it was a really difficult building to move out of. Hey, you know, these 2 guys, they live here. They know the building. They're college kids. They're just trying to pay their way through school. So all of a sudden, dude, we moved 30% of that building in the next 45 days.
Wow.
My brother had a friend. This was at University of Georgia. Had a friend that his grandfather just so happened to have a moving truck. It was like pure serendipity, right? So again, now I'm finding another thing. I think we made like $8,000 in like 45 days. I graduate, go on, got a quote unquote real job. And this is, you know, a traveling sales job. My brother and friend with grandfather's moving truck, end up doing like $23,000 the next summer, you know, and I was kind of funding and coming back when I could and stuff like that to still participate. So meanwhile, man, I'm just realizing like I was never, even with a traveling sales job, like 9 to 5 still, like even from the 11-year-old self in me or however old you are when you're in 5th grade, just knew that wasn't going to ever jive with me. Right. And my boss said something to me and I'll never forget. It was like that pivotal, like fork in the road moment that like I can taste it and feel it. And like, I'm literally still there. Right. He was like, you're not going to be fully respected in this industry until your hair looks like mine. Dude, he was 2 years from retirement and his hair was white as snow. Like, I'm not trying to wait 40 years just to gather some respect around here, right?
Exactly.
Like I'm not, you know. So anyway, so I quit within a matter of about a month after that. It's a pivotal moment in my life. And I go just full in with this moving thing. Like I never intended to go to college or start a moving company. It's not the big sexy, you know, Instagram or Uber or Tesla, right? It was just like a thing that I could do that would be my own. And that's all I wanted. So within the next 36 months, I'm doing business in 32 states. I have hundreds of employees. I have a multi-million-dollar company. I'm doing business with 5 of the 7 major players in the specific space that we were in, all $100 million companies.
Wow.
I'm driving the distance from New York to LA and halfway back in 10-day periods just to try to keep up with growth. I'm flying red eyes all the time. I'm managing cash flow. I'm owed like $400,000 trying to make payroll, driving through Manhattan, trying to come up with 65 grand to make payroll in 24 hours because I was owed all this money that, you know, when you work with big companies, they pay net 30, net 60 terms, which means you sign a contract when it's due. They're like, okay, we'll pay it when you can. And they're really drag it out. So I'm absorbing cash flow and I'm getting all these crazy lessons and things that I had no idea, you know, like what do you do when you owe people money and you haven't been paid yet? Like it's just, it was an unbelievable journey. So I'm in my mid 20s, like 26, 27. I've got a multi-million-dollar company, this moving thing that I just happened to have start out of a college apartment. And that was the iteration. That was my first official experience with entrepreneurship. And then we can kind of take it from there if you'd like.
Yeah, no, that's wow. That's crazy. I think one of the things that I'm taking away from this, and I'm sure other people can, is like when you look at like online businesses, at least for me, like I'm 24, so like everything that I've seen online is all this like flashy stuff. Like, oh, you take a photo, you get tons of likes, people pay you to advertise the quote unquote like content creator. But I think the generation, at least for me, if you're not getting like a 9 to 5 job, there's so much you can do outside of like a 9 to 5 to be successful.
Oh yeah.
That like that story right there just like showed it. And like for me, like I'm currently in my, I graduated college 2 years ago, and I'm in my 9 to 5 job, and I'm hitting that like slump where it's just like like you said, where the guy said like you have to have gray hair and you have to be in this for years to be respected. Where I'm trying to figure out how I'm not trying to cut corners and become rich quick, but I'm more or less trying to build something stable, where it's something that I'm passionate about, and it's cool, and that's crazy that it's a multi-million-dollar company. Wow.
It's funny, man. It's funny because you said something I think is really important. You talked about how, the likes and engagement and stuff like that on social media. And it's funny because when there was a beauty in not having those things, right? When I first started that business. Now there was Facebook. I'm not that old, right? There was Facebook and Twitter, and Instagram still did exist, not into the capacity that it does today.
For sure.
But this was like 2012, 2013, right? So it was still in the early stages of those things. And I think here's the thing. We've gotten so distracted by the bells and whistles of social media. I love the access to information. I love the ability to reach an audience globally, like literally like that from your cell phone. I love that aspect, but we have to take it for what it is. These are marketing tools. Like, this is not a business in and of itself, unless you're just getting brand deals and crazy stuff and you're a celebrity or whatever. Like, too many people are relying on social media as a business, not an aspect of their business or a marketing tool to build a business. And same with podcasting, same with YouTube, same with everything. You've got to have a core business behind those things, and that's a big part that we're really missing right now.
Yeah, that was I kind of had that eye-opening experience with wanting to create content. Like, I've been trying to create content for the past like 5 years, and it didn't really stick. Like, I didn't have anything to motivate me behind it, just besides me just wanting to create the content. And then it hit me as I started to create this podcast about a year ago, is that you need to have a sound structure behind you to kind of become successful in creating online content and creating podcasts or creating vlogs. Like, I used to look at vlogs. I used to watch tons of vlogs, and I would be so obsessed with like they're doing this crazy life, and I would just see them filming themselves, and that's what I wanted to do. But it didn't hit me that like they're able to do that because of the job that they've created for themselves, and they've been able to boost that job with creating things online.
Yep. Totally. Hit the nail on the head, man. And I think that there's big opportunities out there, and people will be like, oh, well, moving business. Blah. Thing is, and I've been in tech, and I've been in a lot of different spaces now, and I'm, currently developing an app, and like, we do fun stuff too. Not that moving business wasn't fun. I'm not taking that away. But here's the deal. There's a lot of dinosaur industries. There's a lot of things. Like, we need to identify, the simplicity of entrepreneurship is this: identify a problem, derive a solution.
Yep.
Identify a problem, derive a solution, right? And we've kind of really made it too complicated. And I love the vloggers. I love Casey Neistat. I love these guys. Like, I love, they're fantastic, right? But the likelihood, if we're being realistic and objective about it, and if you talk to them, so even I know some of these guys, right? They've been on my show, and how long it took them to actually make any kind of money is just so long. And more importantly, this too, and Casey will tell you this. I'm not friends with Casey, they've never been on my show, but I've watched where he's talked about this, where he was financially really struggling for a long time because the financial model that's behind what it is that he does, like, we see the glamorous side of it. We see like the fun side that he gets to like play with these devices and like do these things and just document his life and like whatever. But up until maybe more recently than people think, was barely getting by off of what he was making. And here's the problem. YouTube, because that's primarily what he relies upon, right? As far as AdSense, making money off of the paid money that comes through with YouTube. They keep changing the algorithms. YouTube just changed their algorithm recently yet again, and we don't control that, right? We don't control that. So my point is this: if you can identify problems in the market, right, in a market, it could be something that just has affected you, like scratching your own itch, right? Something that you deem is like, man, this really sucks, and I want to make it better. The moving industry sucked. It sucked. It was these like blue collar, middle-aged men that just didn't give a shit. They just didn't care about the job that they did, and people wanted something better. And so we delivered that to them. We had a more sophisticated approach. We took a white collar approach to a blue collar industry. So I think that we've missed the forest for the trees because we've been somewhat disillusioned by the allure of what some of these things have presented. And I'm probably sound like an old grumpy man talking, this and that about social media and YouTube and this and that. And I use all these things. Don't get me wrong. I use all these things. And trust me when I tell you, it has been so much easier having them than not having them to the capacity we use them today. Now, there have their challenges. It's saturated. There's a lot more people out there doing it. My first Facebook ad campaign, we ran $400. We made $23,000 in return off of a $400 ad spend.
That's crazy.
It was insane because nobody was doing it at that point. It was so easy in front of your target audience, right? Now everybody's doing it, so you're fighting. It's an auction block, and to make that kind of money, you probably have to spend $20,000 and make $23,000 if you were lucky, right? So it's gotten a lot more saturated. But my point is this: we've lost sight of what we can do, like what you can do, the individual. And if you aspire to be like Casey and you want to have a vlog and you want to be YouTube famous or Instagram famous, go for it. Like, put your heart and soul into it. But if you want to start a business and just be able to like self-sustain yourself and be self-employed, it is much easier, right, than what people actually think it is to build a real thriving business and then include social media as a part of your holistic marketing strategy.
That's one of the things I've been kind of lately just kind of trying to put my hands into everything that I can to kind of see what sticks for me and that. Yeah. So I definitely agree with that, and especially because I am younger, I still have quite a bit of ways to go and things like that. So tell me, so you went from this moving company, and what was in between that and the company that you have now called StartupU? Sorry, I do also have a speech impediment, but yeah.
No, you're good, man.
Thank you.
You're doing great. So we got to multi-millions. I was in the process of raising what's called a Series A, which is like one of your first big rounds of institutional capital, right? So you're raising outside funds. You're getting investment dollars, right? So I started feeling, this was like I was like 29, so it was going into my 30th birthday, and I started to notice that I started to just feel very weak, didn't have a lot of energy, and that seemed to progressively get worse. So anyway, so I roll up into May of that year, actually like right around the time of my 30th birthday, actually. And my wife was like, finally, she's like, we've been kicking the can down the road for a while. Like we knew, like I had signs that there was something going on with me. I ignored it because, dude, when you're in the middle of growing a business like that, we grew 1,000% revenue for 50,000 first year to 500,000 second year. And it was actually like 8 months, not 12 months. So it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have time to eat, let alone worry about what's going on with your health. Like I was in my 20s. I'm 27, whatever, 26, 27 years old. So you just put your head down and just keep pushing through, right?
For sure.
It's weird, but when you start to, if you have any kind of underlying health issue, it'll start to manifest at 30. Like, I don't know what it is about that, but that was my situation. I've heard many people have the same situation. You start to lose your bulletproofness when you get out of your 20s. So anyways, man, I went to this practitioner that she had heard of. It was more of like an integrative medicine, which I'm a firm believer in, MD, but also have functional medicine as like kind of a background. So anyways, they ran $2,000 worth of labs. We were testing everything. I mean, any cavity of my body, I swear they were getting some kind of sample from to test. And as it turned out, there's something called intestinal dysbiosis, which effectively is like a precursor for some really bad things, including colon cancer, right? So they told me that of the people that we've ever tested, someone for your age, in our 35 years of being in business as a practice, you, for your age, are the worst we've ever seen. Like, basically it means your level of good gut bacteria versus bad gut bacteria was so imbalanced. They're like, basically, if the cops are the good guys, or the good bacteria, and the bad bacteria is the bad guys, your cops packed up and left town.
Wow.
So effectively what that means is you start shutting down internally. Like your gut, you can't process foods the way you can. You're not absorbing things the way you should. So it causes a chain reaction, right? So I had deficiencies across the board. My testosterone just nosedived. I mean, vitamin D deficiency. I mean, literally every discernible marker down the list showed red for deficient in some way. My thyroid was shutting down. My adrenals were shutting down. I mean, it was a really bad situation. And they told me, they said, look, I think they kind of picked up on the fact that, type A driven entrepreneur, that I was just going to be like, okay, well, what drug can I take to keep pushing, right? They're like, if you don't address this, you're going to be gone by 40, 50 if you're lucky. It was literally what they told me.
Wow.
So anyway, so there had been a comedy of things that were going on with the moving business around that time. Some issues, regulatory compliance measures. The state of Georgia kind of changed some of their things and this and that. But anyways, bottom line is when I got sick, what you realize is that a startup business, you are the asset to a large degree. Like you are the driver, you are the engine, you are the wheels, you are
No, that makes sense. Right? Yeah.
Now I'm saying that was a mistake that I made, right? Because I could have built it differently. Knowing what I know now, I would have done so differently, because like that's really risky to put all your eggs in that basket of you, and I would have done it differently. But
for sure,
as a novice entrepreneur, I didn't know that. So the business quickly was falling apart. Eventually we had a severe motor vehicle accident in Florida that basically my attorney's like, look, you're sick. This is what's going on. The business is done. Like he basically, was like, look, you need to move on with your life and move on from this business. So anyway, so I did. So I moved on from the business, and I was, having the whole identity crisis of like, I'm a failed entrepreneur and, woe is me. And I had built up my identity so much around Chris, the successful entrepreneur. Like I was going and I was giving speeches and like talking to students and like getting involved in various capacities. And I'm like, I feel like a fraud, right? Like here I was, I had this meteoric rise and then just crashed just as quickly as I rose. So anyway, so I was bedridden, man. 2017, that was my life. Like I literally, my health was in such a state that I literally could not get out of bed. Going and taking the trash out was like a big win for my day. That's a true story. Wow. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, what can I do? Like I can't just sit around and feel sorry for myself, albeit I did. And I was suicidal and everything. Like it was a really dark place. We were in a bad spot. Unfortunately, my wife was in the process of really growing her business, and that saved our butts. If it weren't for that, we'd have been evicted in the whole night. It would have been terrible. I had no choice. I would have had to get a 9 to 5. So anyways, I was like, what can I do? I can use my knowledge, because I've accumulated a ton of knowledge, right? So I can help my wife as a wisdom worker for her business and insert myself as like a chief advisor, and I can pay it forward, right? So I can use this stuff, all these things that I've learned. Like I'm having these amazing conversations growing this business. How do I package that up and actually help other people? One of the biggest things you can do, and this is a life lesson, not necessarily a business lesson, but albeit it's both. When you are down, if you want to get yourself back to where, back on the horse, right? You're down in the dumps. Service to others is the fastest way you can get back on the horse. Like pouring yourself into doing something, whether that's charity work or volunteer work or mentorship or whatever. Like I don't know what it is about service to others, but it will literally just pull you out of any rut that you're ever in. Obviously, minding, obviously physical ailments and stuff like that. Like that was obviously a very pervasive thing with me. So I created the podcast. Short, kind of long-winded way to get to that. I created the podcast. So at the time it was Entrepreneur Hour. I launched it around the same time, actually like a couple months before the moving company closed, and I kind of knew things were trending that direction, right? But I was like, let's really focus on this. So within 2 weeks, the show was trending top 5 at that time on New and Noteworthy on iTunes under business, health, and education. I went from like, hey, we got 10 downloads today to like, oh my God, we got 5,000 downloads this morning, right? So immediately I'm like, okay, how do I use this exposure to reach out to people that I could acquire to have on the show that are noteworthy people, right? So like Damon John, for example, is one of the first big gets that I got. I've had 3 of the sharks from Shark Tank, Grant Cardone, Jack Canfield, Guy Kawasaki, Marie Forleo, Dave Asprey, Dr. Josh Axe. Like I always hate naming names because there's been so many amazing people that come on my show. I honestly feel like I'm doing them a disservice by forgetting their name. But yeah, amazing people. Like the people I read their books, and I was like, never in my wildest dream did I think that I would have their one-on-one attention on my show. Like that was so crazy to me, right? So it's funny because I felt horrible. Like I'm still in this health crisis. And a lot of them, man, I was recording the interview and I'm like this. I'm like leaning on my hand for those that are listening, not watching, and like barely just trying to like prop myself up to do that. Like that's what poor state I was in. But I just kept plugging away. I just did 1 a week. and I started coaching, started helping businesses that were like in a similar place that I was in, really experiencing a lot of growth and not knowing how to manage it. I'm helping my wife build her business. I'm taking on clients. I'm mentoring for various programs and doing all these things. And then slowly, my full-time job became my health, because I didn't want to live the life that I saw my father live, which was prednisone. He had Crohn's, right? So I'm trending in the same trajectory.
My
right?
dad
Digestive
has that too.
issues, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, cancer, so on and so forth. I don't want that. I'm 29 at this point. I'm 30. I don't want that, right? So I'm like, how do we address this naturally? Which is a whole different topic of conversation. And it took me years to like educate myself on how exactly I could do that. But I spent the last 4 years really revamping my health, coaching, and then I'm just now at a point now within the last year where we're starting to package up our own online offers to teach people kind of the predictable patterns that we've seen from our experience. And my wife now has a 7-figure business. So we both launched multi-million-dollar companies before we were 30 years old. How do we, and we've helped other people do the same through all of our students and stuff that we've built through her program.
For sure.
How do we continue to educate people and create entrepreneurs that are going to go out, like people like yourself, that are going to go out and change the world in some meaningful way, right? I'm not the type that believes that we have to wait for bureaucrats to come up with some policy that changes the world. I think it's people like Elon Musk that change the world. I think it's people like Jeff Bezos that change the world. I think it's people like Steve Jobs that change the world. Like, I think it's people like me and you that change the world.
Exactly.
And I think it's just a matter of us having that empowered state of mind to go out there and say, this is what I want to change. This is what's important to me. This is a matter that is near and dear to me, or something that I've experienced that I want to make better, right? And then it's a matter of just going and doing that. And in so doing, what we're able to do is affect change through educating other people on, okay, here's how you really do it. Here's how you've heard online to do it, like build a business, whether that's on or offline. Here's what it really looks like, right? Because we've helped ourselves do it, but we've also helped thousands of people now do it too. So that's how StartupU came to be, and kind of what I've been doing in the intermediate basis. The positive thing in all that was I also picked up, I always say this, moving business in the 4 years that I did it, that was like my MBA in entrepreneurship, right? And in the last 4 years of like me perfecting my health and doubling down on where I went wrong and hosting the podcast and reading, I've read hundreds of books on entrepreneurship, was like getting my PhD. And it's crazy because it was like God had this crazy plan for me that I wasn't expecting, where I saw these big challenges in my life, right? Like my health journey taking 4 years, like people can't even imagine, 4 years to invest in my health as my full-time job. It was painful to have to sit and watch other people do the things they wanted to do when I couldn't even lead a normal life, right? And now it's crazy, man, because it's becoming the biggest blessing in disguise that I've ever experienced. Because as recently as 2 weeks ago, I'm having conversations with people that are calling me and be like, hey man, I watched one of your YouTube videos. These random people, right? I don't even know these people, like reaching out and being like, hey, can I whatever? And I'll get on the call, I'll get on the phone with them because I want to help, And they're like, my health is the exact same thing, and they're crying and they're like in a really dark place and stuff like that. And it's like, it's become one of the things that I think makes me most unique of all the people that I follow online, but also impacting people's lives in such a way that like, that's literally only a thing that God could have laid out for me, right? Like I could have never, my mess became my message, and I could have never foresaw that to be the case. So it's really been a fascinating journey in the years in between.
Wow. That is a powerful story right there. Let me tell you.
Thanks, man.
That's inspiring that's inspiring to me, and I'm sure it's inspiring to other people too, who are just trying to kind of figure out what they're trying to do with their lives and getting out there. Was it hard for you at first to kind of put yourself out there in a podcast, knowing that you had all this knowledge of being an entrepreneur and things like that, but did you ever like hesitate and think like, is this really what I want to go into? Like, were you dabbling in with that type of stuff before you hopped on to the podcast?
I think so I've always been somewhat of an open book in that sense, but I will say this, you pick up a lot of things along the way, like how to tell a story, how to modulate your voice, how to sound interesting.
For sure.
And people, I think sometimes they hear me now and they're like, oh man, he was just born to do that. He has a voice for radio. Blah, blah, blah. Like I get those things and I'm like, not really. Like this has been definitely a learning and growing process. And I remember one of my first few episodes, and I hate that this happens. I don't know if this happens to you, But people, when they find a new podcast, the first thing to do is go back to the first few episodes. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you go back and listen when I was terrible? Listen now when I've practiced.
Yep.
So one of my buddies, he's like one of my straight shooter friends, right? He's like, hey man, maybe you need to consider drinking coffee before. And that was like his way of saying like, it sucked and you're terrible. So yeah, man, I remember my first few episodes, people don't know this, but most of those interviews that I did early on, it wasn't video at that point. It was just audio.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like sitting in my closet because I had a little snowball mic and the acoustics, like the reverb in the room was it sounded horrid unless you did that. So I'm literally sitting in the closet recording these interviews or like doing my own solo episodes. And I remember just being so timid about like expressing myself or like literally even doing like a 10-minute solo show. It felt like an hour, right? Now I can like talk backwards for an hour and a half because you just get used to it. It's just it's outside of your comfort. It's not normal. Like right now, I'm not looking at a human, right? I'm not looking at you, Chris. I'm looking at a DSLR Canon camera.
Yep.
And yet I'm having to express myself in a sense of communicating in a way that I would with a real person, right? So it's just it's very unorthodox. It's very unnatural for us, and most people don't push themselves through the discomfort, right? Or they listen to an episode of theirs and they're like, oh God, that's how I sound. It's like, yeah, that's how you sound. At least with the microphone that you have. If you upgrade, you're probably going to sound better, right? But that is how you sound, and those are things you say, and they kind of are stumbling on their words. And you just have to, if you really want, if it's something that's on your heart, right? Like I always tell people this, like, don't just do a podcast for the sake of doing a podcast. 80% of the podcasts that are submitted to Apple, I was about to say iTunes, I'm still working on that. They pod fade. Right? They don't even get past like 10 or 20 episodes. And I think the fact of the matter is they're doing it just for the sake of doing it. Like you have to really be doing it because I always say this, podcasting is the ultimate passion project, right? Like you do it because you're passionate about sharing something or sharing a message or communicating or just, it has to be, you're almost enamored with the idea of doing it and having that. Like I would never, it's one of the most valuable assets in my life now. And it leads to networking connections that I couldn't even possibly dream of. It's made me hundreds of thousands of dollars indirectly through those connections.
For sure.
But yeah, to answer your question more succinctly, it's you're going to be uncomfortable at first. Like it's just a matter of it, and you're going to get better, and you're going to suck for like 50 to 100 episodes.
Yep.
And then you're going to suck a little bit less for the next 100 episodes. And then hopefully by episode like 300, you're getting a little bit good, which is where I'm at now. I'm at like 310. So you will get better over time, practice, do other people's shows. I think that's one of the big things, Chris, is like me being on the other side of the conversation helps me be a better host, right? Or me listening to people like Joe Rogan or Howard Stern or, you know, Larry King, right? R.I.P. to Larry King. He was the
R.I.P. He was.
Listening to those people and really studying them. Oprah is another great one. Study those people and how they do what they do if you're on an interview platform. So immerse yourself in what people are doing. I just think that people, they just jump into things because it's like a flashy bell and whistle, like we talked about with social media.
Exactly.
But they don't really have a plan. So I respect the fact that people like you, like reached out to me and you're like, hey man, I'm excited. Here's my setup, right? Like I have this microphone, this camera. Like I can tell you're invested. You're in it for the long haul. You didn't just throw some stuff together and then be like, okay, whatever. Like you're actually invested in doing this. And so if that's somebody that wants to do this, you just have to know it's a journey, it's a process. Invest yourself and you'll slowly get better over time.
Yeah.
Hope I answered your question.
No, for sure. No, that's something that as somebody, so for me, I started this podcast, it'll be a year on April 12th.
Cool.
And I started my podcast basically, so like I said before, I have a speech impediment. So speech to me has always been something that has come so hard for me. And even like looking back, like I used to be absolutely terrified to go in front of people, in front of class and do a report. I was so scared that people were gonna make fun of me. Like I've been put down so many times, like because of my speech, and that kind of translated to like whenever I got invested into like watching vlogs, watching podcasts and things like that, where it put me down. I was like, no one would want to watch it because that was the way I was thinking of myself.
Sure.
So once I put myself in the mindset where I want to start a podcast, this is something that I can do. And then once I put it into my head to do something that I enjoy, which I don't ever consider myself like my show is like me just ranting for like half an hour. But the best thing that I've learned from the past year about it is like I can now make sense of things so much more, and it's helped me, and it's helped me in my job whenever I have to answer the phone and talk to clients, and it's helped me formulate better conversations with my friends and things like that, and it's helped me like just get more confident with being who I am. And it's something I put in my head like at the beginning of 2021. I was like, I'm gonna do a podcast every week, even if it sucks. And it goes back to your thing where you said where your friend said drink some coffee because you sound kind of boring. Like I have to like force myself to sit down and do it, even if I don't think it's gonna be good, because it's just like the repetition is gonna pay off, and it's exciting. And I like talking to people. Something I've been striving to do with the podcast, when you do a solo podcast, just like you're talking to yourself, you're finding what's trending, and you're like, let's talk about this. Let me give you my opinion. But it's nice to talk to somebody who also has like the same enthusiasm as I do.
Well, kudos to you, man, because a lot of people are too afraid to do anything, and even be in front of a microphone. And so with your unique situation, you doing it despite all that, I think that's extremely commendable, man. So that kudos to you for like stepping out into that.
Thank you.
Area of fear and concern and all those things, man. I think that's extremely admirable, and it should tell everybody else that there's no excuse.
Exactly.
Right? If you feel like this is what you should do, there's no excuse. Like you're doing it, there's no excuse. Anybody could do it.
Exactly. All right, so we've gotten the business stuff out of the way. Let's talk about something fun. All right,
let's do it.
The Snyderverse. I saw your tweet, and it made me so hyped that I could talk to someone about this, because I love superheroes, man.
Who doesn't? Anybody who doesn't, I feel like they were like dropped on their head as a child. Like I don't understand how you like watch a superhero movie and be like, oh, that sucked, I don't like that.
For sure. So I knew that you were a comic book fan once you tweeted I forget what it was. It was like I forget the exact hashtag that was going on, but it's like restore the Snyderverse.
Yeah.
Because I had to like explain to my friends whenever Zack Snyder dropped his version of it. I was like, you guys don't understand. It's not the same movie. There's more. There's more. So
yeah, it's tough, man, because I just recorded a video that I'm going to put on YouTube, which is very unorthodox for me. Like I pretty much keep it business centric, and I'm might going to change that a little bit on YouTube. I'm still very much figuring YouTube and like what works on YouTube out.
Exactly.
So anyways, yeah, in that video, I apologize to Zack Snyder. Like, not that he's ever going to see it, right? But I apologize to the aura of Zack Snyder, and because I think the biggest thing is people, myself included, we kind of saw Batman vs Superman, the theatrical cut, and then we saw the director's cut, and it was like, okay, like it's still not a good movie, but at least I understand what they were trying to do, right? Yep. And then Justice League, we kind of heard all the stuff that came out about it, and it was like, oh well, Zack, and terrible situation with his daughter, and her committing suicide at the end of filming it or whatever production, like that really is horrible,
terrible.
But then the Justice League movie came out, and I think a lot of people just assumed, given it was Joss Whedon and the success he had with Avengers and everything else, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and stuff like that, I think we just figured like, wow, it must have been a train wreck if Joss Whedon, if this is his salvage job, it must have been pretty bad, right? And obviously it was met with serious almost hatred, right? The Justice League was just, it was horrible. People just hated it. So then release a Snyder cut was going on with like crazy, and I'm like, and honestly I was indifferent about it. I was like, do I really want another Snyder? I always used to joke about Zack Snyder. I said he can't tell a bedtime story in less than 4 hours. Because he needs, like, he just is a very different he's a very different cat when it comes to, I think, his way of making films. I think he overuse of certain filters for his movie. Like you can tell a Snyder movie when you see it, right?
Yeah.
300, they all have the same feel. Like aesthetically, they have the same feel. And then I watch his cut of Justice League, and I'm like, this is a masterpiece. This is like everything a comic book fan would want. You may not be a comic book fan, like I said, and there's something wrong with you, and God rest your, like, I really seriously, like, God have mercy on you. Like, I don't know what's wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a true comic book fan, I think there's everything to love and very little to not love about it, other than the fact that it is 4 hours. But truth be told, man, my impression was I was still fixated on every little intricacy.
Yes.
It didn't feel long to me because I was so invested. The character development, I didn't think that he could do that level of character development.
Me
I honestly
neither.
didn't believe that.
I didn't think he could. It was crazy.
Right?
It was
like, I actually give a shit about Cyborg now. Like, I actually care about Flash.
He was the hardest
These were
soul.
characters in the Justice League that, like, Booyah was literally the extent of Cyborg.
Exactly, yes.
Just horrid. Like, it was just, and I love Cyborg. Like, I think Cyborg is such an underrated character. And spoiler alert, so cut this off right now or fast forward if you haven't watched the movie and you're like, don't ruin it for me. But, like, there are things that he does in the Snyder Cut, meaning Cyborg, that even in my fandom, I didn't even think about the fact that, like, as the digital age that we live in keeps progressing, Cyborg becomes more and more as an important, powerful character in the world.
Yeah, I didn't think about that either.
Do. Right?
That was like, whenever they brought that up and said you can control nukes, you can give people money, I was like,
yeah,
I guess that's, wow, he's literally the most powerful. It's just that blew my mind that he went that far into that.
It's arguable that he may be, in his own right, in his own capacity, he may be a more powerful character. This is going to be crazy, but than Superman. Like, Superman can't control nukes. Superman can't crash the global economy and, like, put us into despair. Like, he can't do all those things that Cyborg can literally do with his mind.
Yeah,
crazy. That
would be the best argument of, I'm just, like, thinking back on it now. It's now that you say that, I guess I, like, kind of pushed that out of the way. It was really cool to see him. I mean, we all know Batman, we all know Superman, but I feel like the character development of the Flash and Cyborg, without them, the movie wouldn't have been as great as what it was. The character, like, seeing Cyborg literally, like, at the end of the day, like, if you break down it's Cyborg figuring out what he has to do because he saves, I mean, the Flash technically saves.
Yeah, but together.
And everybody working together,
and the problem is with Justice League. So if I call it Justice League, for those who don't know, that's the theatrical cut. That's what we saw in the movie theaters. It's called, people are calling it the Justice League, right? The Joss Whedon cut. The big problem that I had with, and this is what I talked about in my YouTube video that's coming out, is they pretty much just shit on everybody except for Superman. Like, Batman makes little stupid. I like Mickey's Heroes, aka the Avengers. I like them. They're fun. But I just find myself feeling it's missing that serious tone, right? Like, it never feels really consequential.
Yes.
Even when, like, the closest they got was with Thanos. Like, obviously you're like, well, bro, Thanos would, like, eliminate half the world or half the planet, whatever, half the creatures in the universe. But, like, yeah, but he has a scrotum chin. Like, he just doesn't, like, it never, like, he doesn't feel like a really threatening character.
For sure.
Right? It's like, it feels like a movie, and they're still making jokes while they're doing it. Like, they're still joking around with each other and their little quips while they're fighting. So one of the things that I appreciated about Snyder's take is, like, he takes the character seriously. Now, there is comic relief, but it's not so much that it stops taking itself seriously, right? Like, to me, this is how I always break it down. I always say that if DC is really smart, if Warner Bros. Is really smart, Marvel is like Nintendo, right? Like, it appeals to all audiences. Like, I'm gonna play Nintendo. I like Nintendo. Like, I have no problem with Nintendo. Like, dude, give me some Mario. I love it. Like, it's throwback for me. I'll play any Mario game or whatever it is. Like, I'll play those games. It's a fun console and it's great for kids and they'll get a kick out of it, right?
For sure.
DC has a chance, Warner rather has a chance to be like the Xbox or the PlayStation with their console. It's mature, it's serious. There are games on there that is not appropriate for kids.
Exactly.
So when Warner came back, one of the things they didn't like about the Snyder Cut originally was that Steppenwolf looked, quote unquote, too scary. I'm like,
yeah, I heard that.
Don't you want your villains to be imposing? Like, don't you want, like, you're in a universe with the DCEU that has the Joker. Like, the Joker is not a laughing character. Like, he is sinister, he is evil, he is psychotic, right? Like, he does horrifying things. And same with all of these various characters that they have in the DCEU. They're serious characters, require a serious tone that I feel like if you just try to be Marvel light, you're missing the real opportunity. And I feel like Justice League, you know, basically not only did they just crap on every other character, even Batman's making little stupid quip jokes, like, where Superman's like, "Do you bleed?" Like, to repeat the thing from Batman vs Superman, right? And he throws him. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's bleeding." I'm like, dude, in what iteration of Batman ever in the comics or the animated series, which all of us grew up on? Batman the animated series was fantastic, or
So
Justice League Unlimited, right? Batman is a series, or even the Arkham video game series. Like, Batman is gritty. Batman is dark. Batman is brooding. Batman is not, "Oh yeah, it's bleeding." Like that's so stupid. It just, I don't know in what world they thought. I literally can't get over this, man. I can't get over the fact that the Warner Brothers executive sat there and watched both, right? Like, let's say you're on the Warner Brothers executive team, right?
All right.
You watch both of those, and you somehow arrived at this trash with this CGI mustache that literally looks like some deformed human on Superman was somehow better than what Snyder came up with. Like, that feels like hubris to me. That feels like somebody's ego got in the way, wouldn't release, like, okay, you know, this actually is a better version, we're going to run with this. Like, I don't understand it. It's a total disaster.
Yeah, I think, especially at that time, Marvel was kind of like, I mean, they are the head honchos right now, but like they were really like, that's when like Thanos was just getting announced and things like that, and they were trying to build up. And I think bringing in Josh, kind of, maybe they were trying to just fix it and make it more like that, where, like you said, I want, for the DC characters, I want grit, I want things that you're like, that actually like makes you feel. And there's gonna be comedic release at some point, but I invest in like the grittiness, the realness that you get from those characters that you don't necessarily get from Iron Man, from any like Scarlet Witch, Spider-Man, any of those things.
I feel like they did that though. They did a good job of that in Snyder's cut, which is the part that I don't understand, because Flash was funny.
He was
in his own quirky way, right? And Hal Jordan has a very unique part. Like, the dynamic, if they literally had even looked into their own source material, if you look at the dynamic between Flash and GL, Hal Jordan's, not Jon Stewart's. Jon Stewart's is a little bit more serious.
He is, yeah.
But with Hal Jordan's, Ryan Reynolds was the perfect. I thought they casted that perfectly.
Yes.
Now imagine pulling Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern into that with Ezra Miller's Flash. The dynamic they would have back and forth with each other. That's your comic relief right there.
That would be really good.
Exactly. But then you keep Batman, and like, Wonder Woman is a serious character. And why in the world, spoiler alert, another one, the bank scene with Wonder Woman, when she just, I mean, it was just an incredible scene. Beginning of the movie, she just owns everybody, right?
So powerful.
End, she's, dude. And they also, here, another thing, real quick, side note, the music, they made it more serious.
Yes,
they
did.
Brought it back, and they brought you know, like that, like Troy type, like ancient Greek, whatever music. That was every time they showed the Amazons, they brought that in, which I felt like so powerful. Like, music, the score makes such a difference, right? It really does. So anyway, Wonder Woman just owns the whole thing and like stops these guys from, you know, blowing up this bank or whatever. And then these people are horrified, which was actually like, felt really like they did a great job of hearing their screams of like of fear. It felt really real, like these people are legit gonna die, right? Wonder Woman goes up to this little girl that's still on the ground, and she's like, the girl's like, "I want to be like you when I grow up." She's like, "You can be anything you want." Like, dude, that is such a tearjerker moment.
It was.
But it's also so true to the essence of who Wonder Woman is, that I really don't know, other than just not understanding these characters, like just really not knowing these. Like, I think Joss Whedon is just literally a Superman fan and just knows nothing else about the other characters, because he literally took that out of the movie. And I have no idea why you would ever take that out. Like, that is like the epitome of who Wonder Woman is. Not to mention the entire fight, the choreography and the fight scenes throughout the movie, specifically with Wonder Woman. It's like, this is Wonder Woman. Like, she's a total badass. And
Yeah.
I, to a degree, felt like this is where it's the studio, not necessarily the directors, including Zack Snyder. But Wonder Woman, the first movie, was fantastic. Like, fantastic. Like, I thought they nailed it. Like, I actually really think that Gal Gadot is like, I didn't know how good she was going to be as Wonder Woman before, because I think she's just so skinny. It's hard to imagine her being like so physically imposing, right? But Wonder Woman 1984, I feel like they tried to be Marvel light.
Yeah.
Like, they really stripped away. It's like the fans loved it. The critics love Wonder Woman. And yet somehow the studio says, hey, Patty Jenkins, let's lighten it up a little bit. Let's make stupid jokes and like not make her feel serious and give her more color in her outfit. And it's just like, I swear that like they literally look in the mirror and be like, this sucks. We're moving on. And it's like, I don't get what they're seeing. I just feel like they're so out of touch. They don't know their characters. It's like, I really worry about the direction of the DCEU, given the fact that it's so obvious. Like, they cannot get away from screwing themselves in a lot of ways. They cannot get away from just being their own worst enemy in so many ways.
Yeah. I would put Wonder Woman, in my opinion, as top 3 top 3 superhero movies released. That's not a group one.
Yeah, Solo.
Like, yes. Solo. It was the part where she's crossing the trench was
epic.
It was amazing. I will say,
Epic.
There was one part that I really did like of the Josh Whedon's Justice League, because I love Batman. He's like my go-to guy.
Yeah, me too.
And the first part, I don't know if you remember, where he destroys the demon. That to me was like, that is comic book Batman finally hitting the big screen. And I loved all the Batmans before that, like the trilogy. But to me, I was like, that right there is comic book Batman actually making his debut appearance on the big screen. It felt as a little kid, I was freaking out.
Yeah. They that scene, the one you're talking about, where he like tricks the parademon because it sensed the fear in the mother box, I think is the one you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, so that actually was pulled. I agree with you. That was actually pulled from the Justice League War story arc. That was like the beginning of Justice League War, and then he has an interaction with Green Lantern and stuff like that. But he's literally doing investigative work to find one of the parademons. So that was directly from the comics for sure.
Yeah, that made me so happy. All right, I have a couple quick fire questions that I think that you would like, and then we can call it.
Cool.
First question though, do you invest in the stock market? Because this is
yes.
Did you buy Doge Coin, or have you bought it?
Yes, I did.
Did you?
I bought it at 2 cents. I wrote it to 8 cents, and I sold it.
Bro, I put $75 in when it wasn't even a penny, and I think it was like 9,000. That's like how much I had, and I let my friends talk me out of, like, they kept like, it's not going anywhere, it's not doing anything, and I watched it get up to 8 cents, and I kept holding, and I was playing games with my friends, and I just so happened to be on my phone when it dropped, and it dropped at 2 cents, and I got so nervous that I sold, and I only made like $100, but when it was up to 8, it was just, I was riding the high. I was like, I can't believe this is a thing.
Yeah, it's tough. Cryptos are tough, man. I pretty much only invest in at this point. So I did throw some money behind Doge. I am mining two. One's called B right now, and the other one is called Pi. So Pi was created by, like, I think Stanford, like a department of professors or something at Stanford. I'm mining those two on my phone.
Oh,
but the only two that I personally buy, and I'm pretty much, so go back to your previous one. Stocks, I'm out. I'm not into doing individual stock picking right now in the stock market. The market's too volatile. In 2020 alone, we printed something like 40%. So 40% of the current U.S. dollars in circulation were printed in 2020, and then the last couple months. So like a year and a couple months. That's a horrible recipe for tremendous inflation. I'm really worried about some of the regulatory stuff that's going on. I think the tax hike in the middle of a pandemic is not a good idea at all. I think the stock market could experience quite a reset.
I think so too.
So I wouldn't individual stock pick right now. I just wanted to be clear because I don't want people to go out and be like, yeah, Chris buys stocks. I need to buy stocks. I would be careful unless it's EV. I think electric vehicles, I think you're going to be somewhat safe there, or something relatable like that would be wise. I'm a big fan of index funds. I love index funds. If you buy S&P 500, even like a I'm trying to think the one I was in before. There's a specific name. I can't think of it at the moment. Anyways, any type of index fund, you're pretty good. You're pretty solid because you're tied directly to the top performing companies, not necessarily individual. So I don't like buying individual companies unless I really know the company, right? Like I really understand the company and what they do.
For sure.
So that, and then I'm an 80-20 split Bitcoin, Ethereum. So 80% of my crypto, I think I'm up to like 80 or 90,000 in crypto right now. And 80% of that is Bitcoin, 20% of that is Ethereum.
Yeah, that I was listening to a podcast. I forget the guy's name, but he's big into Bitcoin, and one of his quotes was like, by 2030, Bitcoin's gonna hit 1 million. And after I like sat down, because at first I just want to say bullshit, but I actually sat down and I looked at it, and once I get my cash out of these, I just recently started investing into the stock market. I got I got caught up in the hype of AMC, GameStop, and I didn't put in a lot. I put in what I was willing to lose, and so I'm currently waiting to get my cash where it's back to where it was, and then I think I'm going to strictly invest in Bitcoin and Ethereum. Have you heard of SafeMoon? This is a new one that just. So the cool thing about that is the people that made it burned all their shares, and you also, if you hold it, they give you more shares as well. It's something I just saw it on online, but I didn't know if you've heard of it.
No, I hadn't heard of that. I hadn't heard of that one. I'm really careful with those. Like I'll maybe do like 1 to 5% of my overall crypto investment is like in something like Doge or whatever, like something very, very small that I'm like, okay, like this might just go to nothing and I'm willing to lose this money. But the primary ones that I'm going to be in are the ones that I know are proven over the last 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we kind of already talked about my next one. My next question was Marvel or DC, but I figured you're going to say DC.
Yeah, DC.
DC, yeah, me too. So business question / marketing question / fun question. TikTok. Are you about it or nah?
I'm not even on TikTok. Bro. I sound like such an old person, but I'm not even on TikTok. I think I have a handle on TikTok. So here's the thing. I know a lot of people are making money, on TikTok. I think it's a huge opportunity. I think right now with like any social media platform, the early stages it's open, it's free reign. Right. Yep. Like same. I would say the same with Clubhouse right now. Like it's wide open, right? They're brand new platforms. So you can be on the hustle. It's a hustle game. You can be on the hustle and you can do well on those platforms. The age range on TikTok, I don't love. Because it's a younger crowd for what I do. Now you may sell something that is different than what I sell, that is worthwhile, like a physical product or something that's $10 to $15 that you may just crush it on TikTok. For what I sell multi-$1,000 online training programs. I highly doubt there's going to be an 18-year-old that's posting something on TikTok that's going to be that and be like, oh my God, I need this program in my life.
That's
like
very true.
Probably doesn't so I always like to say this, like, don't buy into the hype, buy into where your people are, right? That's the most important thing.
That makes sense.
And then the second aspect of that is, and I always tell people this, if you're seriously genuine about wanting to start an online or any business, not even online business, any business, and using social media to grow that business, one of those things, not all, one has to be search, right? So what are the big three search? Blog. I know that word is like, makes people have rashes, break out of rashes because it's such like an old school antiquated thing, but search is a big thing. Google's the biggest search engine. When people search for things that they're looking for, they're searching online. Make sure you rank for those things. That's very, very important. That's on your own website. You own that forever. No one can take that away. They can't change an algorithm on your website. You control that. So that's one of them. The second one is YouTube. So that's why I got into YouTube, because I was doing the podcast and I love my podcast. However, the podcast is not search friendly, meaning people don't go to podcast apps and type in how to start a business, 5 steps. What do they search for? They search for things they know. They look for the top charts. They look for names they recognize, stuff like that. Maybe they hit a few suggested shows, and that's it. But I'm not going to hedge my bet on that. I want to go to a platform where people like you discover me because they're looking for a certain topic. You would not have gone on a podcast app and look for what microphone should I buy to start a podcast. You went to YouTube.
Yeah.
Because why? Because you're searching for information. So I created that on my YouTube channel because I'm trying to build an audience. Now, here's the deal. And this is where it gets really cool, because you can use what I call nurture platforms, meaning non-search platforms, to continue relationships, right? So I'll prove it to you that it works. You found me on YouTube, saw my video, decided to buy a microphone. What'd you do? You went and found me on Instagram. You went and found me on Twitter. You followed what I did. You reached out. You connected. So you literally, I took you through the process, unbeknownst to me, of building that relationship with you to the point we're now recording this together. So what I like to do is take my customers through this customer journey process. Okay, they discuss what are my discoverability platforms? So I have a blog. I do Pinterest. That's the third one. Pinterest is the third one because Pinterest actually has search. People don't know that. Pinterest has search. They discover me on one of those 3, right? My blog, my YouTube, or my Pinterest. They join my email list, hopefully. That's the goal, get them on your email list. Meanwhile, they start subscribing to my podcast, my Instagram, my Twitter, whatever. And I'm continuing to nurture that relationship so that when they're on my email list and I decide, hey, guess what? I sell something. I've already created those touch points, because we all know that it requires something like 11 to 17 touch points to make a sale, to the point that I've built trust and I've built a relationship so that hitting the buy button is a lot easier than had they just found me one time on an Instagram post or on a TikTok. I don't even know what they're calling them. This is literally, I'm showing my age. I literally don't know what they're calling TikTok. A TikTok tick, whatever they're called. So the likelihood that somebody discovers that one thing and on Pinterest or rather on Instagram or on TikTok and says, I love this guy, I have to have it, it's probably not going to happen, right? Like, so we've lost point. We've in our effort to market and be marketers, we've lost sight of marketing psychology, right? Like, you have to stay, and you're a salesperson, you'll get this. You have to take people through a customer journey process.
Exactly.
You have to nurture and develop the sale, not go directly for the sale, right? So what are you doing with these platforms, and how do they fit into your holistic marketing strategy? So I love search platforms, and then I love to nurture my audience, my core audience, the age ranges that I have, and my ideal client avatar profile. Where are they on the platforms that they're hanging out, to reinforce the relationship to eventually make the sale, or to continue customers that are customers so that they will continue to buy my stuff while I'm continuing to put out stuff and keep them updated on what I'm doing.
For sure. Yeah, that's, I just want to let you know, not only is this a podcast where we get to talk and have a conversation, I feel like I've learned so much more with just talking to you than I have just like reading all these self-help books. I'm trying to like figure out my life. So this is also why I started a podcast. This is really cool.
Nice, man. I appreciate that.
And then, I mean, that's about everything. I have a couple small questions, but that's nothing too crazy.
Hit me if you want, man. I got them.
All right. So, we talked about, do you game though? So, first of all, yeah, do you game, or have you?
So, I'm sitting here, and you'll laugh at me. I'm sitting here. I've got an Aurora R9 Alienware computer. Which I suppose I did it for the processing power to do stuff like this to stream. But apparently all my friends tell me it's like a ridiculous gaming computer.
It is.
And I've got 2 massive gaming 4K monitors, one on one side, one on the other side. They're like 32 inches. I mean, they're just huge right in front of my face. And again, I don't use them for gaming. Like, I literally have even the lighting strips that hook up, that plug into my computer. Like, I literally look like I have a gamer setup. I do.
You do, yeah.
And the ironic part is I'm not a gamer at all. If you walked in, you'd be like, this guy's a gamer. It's like, no, I'm not. But I occasionally will play, like Call of Duty or on my Xbox. I don't play it on my computer. I keep it separate. I'm like concerned about bogging down my computer for some reason. But the fact of the matter is that I'm married, and I think you'll find it at some point in your life when you are in that situation, there's little time outside of business and your relationship to be gaming all the time, albeit I do wish I did it more than I actually do. So I will occasionally sit down on the weekends and play, Call of Duty online, or definitely if any of the I love RPG games.
Those are fun.
That's what they're called, RPG, right?
Yes.
So like the Arkham series, that was incredible.
So good.
There's a new Avengers game, not new anymore. It's been like last year. That was fun. Tomb Raider, the recent Tomb Raider was great. The Witcher, that was really good.
Those are really good. Yep.
Yeah, so I do like the RPG. So yeah, I guess, to a degree, I get my gaming time in.
For sure. The only time I game now is just to talk to friends because everything that's going on in the world and stuff. So
yeah.
But yeah, man, I just want to say like thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be on my podcast. I've learned a lot, and it's exciting to see somebody who can start a podcast in less than a year, kind of just figure out what he's trying to do, and then start reaching out and gain the confidence to reach out and hold a conversation with people who are outside of what you normally talk about.
Sure.
So I just want to say like thank you so much. It's I'm a fan of your work. I'm gonna have to check out a lot more of your stuff. I binged like last week. I binged like a ton of your stuff to be prepared. So I just want to say thank you, man. It's been an honor.
Cool, man. I dig it. I'm glad you reached out. I enjoyed the conversation, and keep at it, buddy. I think you're doing a great job. I do have a quick ask of your audience, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So many people don't know this, so I'm going to peel back the curtain so you guys kind of understand how this works, right? So a lot of what you're seeing, what Chris is doing here, is you're seeing like the tip of the iceberg. You don't see the actual work, because he's going to take this and now he's got to go edit it, and he's got to do all these things. He's got to provide all this custom intro and outro and all this other stuff. And then he's got to actually publish it, right? So all of this is to provide value or utility to your life. So I have a quick ask. It's going to take you literally 27 seconds. I promise, 27 seconds. You could go to whatever podcast app you're on and hit subscribe and leave a review, right? And you don't have to even say much. You can just say, great chat, enjoyed it, or whatever. You don't have to say anything. Just hit 5 stars. But please do that. I always say this is like leaving a tip for your waiter or waitress. And all of those things are important because it tells all those podcast apps, this is a show worth listening to. So one of the biggest things to help get a show trending on those platforms is, guess what? Subscribers and recent subscribers and reviews. So if you do that for Chris, you're actually helping him reach more people like you, telling those podcast apps, this is a show it's worth listening to. So that's kind of a behind the scenes look at how the algorithm works. It would really help him out a lot. I would appreciate if you would do that for him.
Thank you. And make sure you check out Chris's shows too. I'm going to have to go back and listen to the ones with Shark Tank, because
yeah,
me and my dad, we used to watch that for hours and hours. So I'll have to go back, and he's going to be kind of jealous that I just sat down to the podcast with somebody who's talked with people from Shark Tank. So
nice.
All right.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. This is fun.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much.
All right. See you, buddy.
See ya.